Hey there, my name is Nathan Agan. This is The Working Actor's Journey, bringing you in-depth conversations with actors that have been working professionally for decades. Today we have a text work session with the award-winning narrator Simon Vance from episode number 23. Previous sessions of text work include Shakespeare, Pinter, Stoppard, and newer works. And if you enjoy this text work session, I highly encourage you to check out the full episode with the guest, as it is packed with so much more on life as a working actor. In this episode, Simon shares how he worked on a couple of different audiobook projects. First, dealing with a practically unreadable chapter in Alan Moore's Jerusalem, and then a bit on The Wake by Paul Kingsnorth. You'll hear Simon discuss the research and immense work that went into the audiobook of Jerusalem, how he made sense of unusual spellings and dialogue without punctuation in The Wake, and what he believes is good narration. Plus, we chat about building confidence and how to approach audiobook projects you may not enjoy. It's a great session, and it was really wonderful to hear Simon's process of both experiencing anxiety and putting in so much effort to make sure he does the book justice for both the author and the audience. So here we go with Simon and Jerusalem. Please enjoy the text work. So thinking about some of the other books that you've worked on, you actually sent over a couple samples because I was curious about what books have been challenging to you. And, you know, there are many different levels books can be challenging, whether it's in terms of content or, you know, characters or accents. But you actually sent over, you know, and we can pick just one or if we want to talk about both, but you sent over a couple, I would say, of extremely challenging texts right off the bat. And actually, one of them, Jerusalem, I mean, that has an interesting backstory in terms of all the research you did, like what you did to get into the mindset of that book. So I don't know if you want to talk about the, you know, the prep for, you know, just doing the book first or working on, you know, part of the text. I don't know what would make it easier for you.
Let me sort of take the expansive view of when you say the sort of books I like and stuff like that. I mean, I do enjoy challenging books. I mean, now there's challenging and challenging. There are books that are badly written and they're like trying to walk through mud. And I hate that. But, and to be honest, there's a lot more of those getting through now than used to be because every single book is being made into audio and there aren't always gatekeepers. And, you know, a lot of books are self-published and so on and so forth. Right. And those get made into audiobooks too a lot of the time. That's not a lot of fun, but there are some books, and you mentioned these ones, Jerusalem. The other one that I'd sent you was called The Wake,
yes,
Paul Kingsnorth.
Yes.
And I you know, one of these, we won't do both of them, but that's a fascinating book as well. But let me go to Jerusalem first, because that's Alan Moore, who is the you know, master of the graphic novel, or as he calls it, the comic. He loves the comics. He was in the 80s sort of reinvented comics pretty much with Swamp Thing, and he wrote V for Vendetta, Watchmen, and stuff like that. A lot of these things made into movies, which he totally disapproves of. He's a wonderful eccentric, and he's written a couple of books, one small one, and then a few years ago he wrote this thing called Jerusalem, which is it's about 800, 900 pages or 1,000. And it's huge, and I got asked to do it. And I was a little bit sort of gobsmacked by this. That's an English expression. And I didn't know quite, this is exciting. I didn't think for a moment I couldn't do it, but I hadn't seen it by that time.
Right.
And I called, I actually wondered, who can I talk to about this? Because it's sort of a secret thing. But I know Neil Gaiman, and I know he knew Alan Moore, and I just sent him off. I said, hey, guess what? They've asked me to do Alan Moore's book. And he was like so excited, and he said, do you want me to introduce you? I was like, yeah. I said, and he said, you should go over and meet him and spend some time with him, because he always writes about, at that point I didn't know what the book was about or anything. He always writes about Northampton, where he's lived all his life. He's very much a homebody and never moved anywhere, doesn't like traveling. And I thought, well, that would be great, but I have no time in the world. I can't go. A couple of weeks later, I was in New York for I think, the Audio Publishers Conference, and there was a big poster, because the Book Expo was up at the same time, big poster of the huge face of this intimidating wizard called Alan Moore. And I thought, oh my God, this is an important book. I really, really should do the work. And I looked at the calendar, and I saw I had 4 or 5 days available to me just before starting to do the book. So I actually had Neil get in touch with Alan, who then arranged that I could meet him. It was very complicated. But anyway, I flew out from San Francisco on the Monday, landed on the Tuesday, visited my younger son in Norfolk on the Tuesday night. Wednesday, I drove to Northampton and spent several hours with Alan, as he wandered around Northampton, showing me all the places that were mentioned in the book.
Wow.
And telling me a lot of stories. We sat and had a coffee and stuff. And then I flew back home on a Thursday, and I sat in the studio and started recording chapter 1 on a Friday.
Wow. Because
I only had a few weeks to get it done in. It's a 60-hour book, so I actually did it over a period of June. Was it 2016, I think? I did it in that month. So I did pretty much a chapter a day, because all the chapters are about 2 to 3 hours. There was one chapter I asked him about, and it's called Round the Bend. This book does a sort of story behind it in places, but many of the chapters are written in the style of a certain writer, like Samuel Beckett or others. And he had this one chapter written in the style of James Joyce, as in I think it's Finnegan's Wake, the one that you find it. So Alan Moore, even before I'd seen the book, had said, I've got this one chapter that's practically unreadable. So I looked at him and went, yes, it's practically unreadable. I asked him about it, and he said, the only advice I can give you is you could try doing it in an Irish accent. And I don't know, some listeners now may know James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, which is a terribly convoluted book that sort of is a big loop. It sort of ends... It ends with the sentence before the beginning, so you can read it in a circle if you want. But it also requires... He spent 10, 20 years writing it, because it's so complicated in that he uses words and changes them so they sound the same as the word you were using, but they have a different meaning.
Wow.
And it just gets very dense. And I've... The first line, and it's called Round the Bend, because his James Joyce's daughter, Lucia, was in a mental asylum in Northampton. So everything in his book is about Northampton.
Oh, wow.
So Alan Moore wrote this chapter about an adventure that Lucia has escaping from the asylum, and he writes it in this James Joyce style. And I'll just do the first sentence or two. He says, "Awake, Lucia gets up with a rising of delight. She is a puzzle, sure enough, as all the nurses and the actors would affirm, but nibber a cross word these days, depending on her medication and on every working Grimpill's progress," which sounds like gobbledygook to some extent, but it's actually almost harder to read off the page than it is to hear it. If I was making it flow, because awake, Lucia got up with the rising of the light. She's a puzzle, sure enough, as all the nurses and doctors would affirm, but never a crossword these days, depending on her medication and on every... I haven't quite worked out working Grimpill's progress, but Pilgrim's Progress is in there too, because he gets a lot of historical references in there too. But it's 3 hours of that. Wow. And that was the one time I had the director call in on Skype and listen to me, and he listened to the first hour and said, "Oh, you're fine," left me to it. And I wanted him to sort of, I mean, it was okay. By that time I was more confident, but at the beginning I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to read this so that it makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Because there's not only the accent and applying that to the words, but then also making sure that you're understanding the sentence and the meaning of it. I mean, it's like translating a foreign language to some degree even good translations can miss subtleties of things. So it's like, how are you? I think I said in email when you sent this to me, like I opened up these files and I immediately wanted to cry. I was just like, oh my God, if I have to narrate this, I don't know what I'd do. And similar, like with the Wake, you said. I mean, the Wake, I don't even know.
Well, the fascinating thing about Paul Kingsnorth is he created this language. The Wake is set shortly after the Norman invasion of Britain. In about the invasion was 1066, so this is set sort of a year or two later. This fellow, he's a landowner, a villager in Kent, and he's dealing with the changes, sort of the old religions, the new religions, the invaders, and all this stuff going on, and the book is in a sort of train of thought. It's just every thought without
like
punctuation.
Jack Kerouac kind of stuff.
Without punctuation. Right. Sometimes the lines are separated, sometimes they're not. But he's also invented the language using some of Chaucer and some original words. Now, this one was, I can't even describe it. You have to see the page.
Right.
When you are presented with a paragraph which doesn't have any punctuation and it's a conversation with people, and you have no sense. There's one here that begins, I is a Sockman of Holland, a part of the Shire of Lincoln. And it's spelt, the Shire is spelt S-C-I-R, of Lincoln, which is the county, but it's L-I-N-C-Y-L-E-N-E, Lincoln, where the ground was black and good and deep, and that's D-E-O-P.
Wow.
But, so I did it with an Old English accent, our ham was an island in the fans, on all sides the wild, on all sides the dabchick, the water wolf, the lish, and the dirk waters, our folk knowin this place, like we know in our wifeman and our children. We know in fishing and fowling, the gathering of the leech. It might be lesh or something. I can't remember what I did there, but, basically you make sense from it for the listener, and it's actually easier for the listener than somebody reading the page.
Right.
Anyway, we've gone straight off into this hole, but to sum up, I love that kind of difficulty, that kind of challenge. I wouldn't want that all the time. I'm doing a book now, just to jump sideways, called Case White, which is about the German invasion of Poland at the beginning of the Second World War. And it's actually wonderful, but it's terribly dense, terribly dense. And it just lists constant, battalions and so on and so forth. There was something I was reading this morning in the studio, and it was just so dense. And I thought, are people actually going to listen to this? Because it's so full of facts, and I've had to spend time with a Pole, got a lot of Polish pronunciations, a lot of German, a lot of Russian. But, like with everything, and once I complained to a publisher because the book I was doing I wasn't enjoying, and I thought it was really badly written, and the person I spoke to said, but it's got an audience. And that's something to bear in mind. Yeah. However bad you may think it is, or difficult, there is an audience out there, and you owe them you want them to trust you that you're going to do a good job for what they particularly want to hear.
Well, and I know you said that you tend to narrate a little bit quicker, but I'm curious, with a book like Jerusalem, and not the entire thing, but maybe even the Round the Bend chapter, or even other chapters, do you have a lot of time to prep, or is it because of maybe your radio days or other training? Do you again feel like, maybe not on the fly, but you are much quicker in terms of getting things ready so that once you hit the booth, you're ready to go?
Yeah, I think my prep is quicker. We definitely have to know what's in the book. What we do is sight reading, but because you can never, unless you have a photographic memory, you never sort of know what's going to come up. So you're sight reading it, but you can't rely on that. If you're telling a story, you need to know who the characters are and so on. So you need to have done the research. And of course, if you've got pronunciations, you need to have those all prepared. I think being a good narrator is about knowing that you can handle it. I think the same thing applies to any kind of performance. I don't get nervous about this. I sit down here, I know I can handle it. I'm nervous, actually. My wife, I always warn her because I'm starting a new book, so I usually end up in a bad mood for the day before because I am nervous. There's a sort of a nervous energy that can take, I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right, until I've done the first chapter and I go, okay, yeah, I got this. And I don't think there's any book, trying to think, probably if I've been asked, because there have been occasions when I've recorded a book twice. I think I've recorded Treasure Island twice. So in those situations, I know this book, I'm going to be fine. But most books, new books come in, I don't know. And even though I've done as much research as possible, I'm nervous. I don't know. Am I, is this going to come out right? And I think it helps as a stimulus to make sure I get it right. I think it's like actors who they've played King Lear 100 times. Right. I think they're still nervous the night they go on is what's going to happen tonight.
Hey guys, Nathan here one more time. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe so you don't miss anything ahead. Be sure to visit workingactorsjourney.com for additional info and links for items mentioned in today's episode, as well as all the episodes. You can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. All the links are on our site and in the episode notes. Become a premium member and enjoy additional benefits and perks of the show starting at just $2 per month. Head over to workingactorsjourney.com/premium to join the Working Actors community. Thanks again to today's guest and to everyone that makes these episodes possible. And a special thanks to you for listening. I'm Nathan Egan, and enjoy the journey.